Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Manahal Bali. I am a student of Rehan School, Korangi Campus. Today I am with Annie. So let's welcome our guest and learn something new with her. So welcome Annie. How are you?
Hi Manal, not Banan. I'm doing great, thanks. By the way, Assalamu alaikum is a beautiful greeting, but since we're not in a formal setting, we can just say hi or hello to keep it casual. What's been the highlight of your week so far?
Okay, Annie. So I would like to ask you some questions. My first question is for you. How do remote worker trends intersect with broader socio-economic shifts such as automation and globalization?
That's a great connection. Remote worker trends intersect with broader socio-economic shifts such as automation and globalization. By the way, your sentence is perfect. You used broader correctly, which means more extensive or wider in scope. Now, can I ask you, how do you think automation will change the job market in Pakistan?
Okay. What are the implications of remote work for education and skill development?
You used implications correctly, which means the effects or results of something. Remote work means people need to constantly update their skills to stay relevant. By the way, have you thought about creating educational videos on upskilling for remote jobs?
Yeah. What does remote work impact imply? Burnout, rates, and stress level.
I think you meant to say what does remote work impact on stress levels imply about burnout or rising impact mental health, implying a higher risk of burnout and stress. By the way, burnout is a phrasal verb that means to become extremely tired or exhausted.
Alright, can you explain more?
I'd be happy to explain more. Remote work can make people feel lonely and isolated, which can lead to stress and burnout.
Alright, so I would like to ask you what are the ethical considerations of remote work, such as surveillance and privacy concerns?
You meant to say what are the ethical considerations of remote work modifiers such as surveillance and privacy concerns. Remote work raises concerns about employers spying on employees and privacy issues. By the way, modifiers is a bit advanced, but you used it correctly.
Alright, thank you so much for your answer. So, can you explain us in 10 points?
I think you meant to say can you explain in 10 points. Here is a brief answer. I'd be happy to explain, but 10 points might be a lot. How about I give you 3 key points about remote work and privacy concerns?
Okay.
I'm excited to help you with that, Manahal. By the way, you said okay, which is perfect. It's a casual way to show agreement or confirmation.
Hmm. Um, my next question is for you. What
Don't
are the
worry,
potential downsides of remote work and how can they be mitigated?
I think you meant to say downsides instead of downsitters. The potential downsides of remote work include feeling isolated, and we can mitigate them by having regular video calls with the team.
Okay. Can you explain it in 10 points?
I think you meant to say can you explain it in 10 points.
Yes.
Here's a correction. Here are 10 points about the potential downsides of remote work and how to mitigate them in feeling isolated. Regular video calls with the team can help to difficulty separating work and personal life. Set boundaries and create a dedicated workspace. 3. Limited feedback and support. Schedule regular check-ins with your manager and colleague. 4. Difficulty building trust. Establish open communication and set clear expectations. 5. Blurred boundaries. Set a routine and prioritize self-care. 6. Lack of social interaction. Join online communities or attend virtual events. 7. Difficulty with time zones. Use time zone friendly tools and schedule meetings according light. Technical issues. Have a backup plan and stay prepared for technical glitch. 9. Cybersecurity risks. Use strong passwords and keep your software up to date. 10. Burnout. Prioritize self care, take breaks, and maintain a healthy work life balance. Phew, that was a lot.
Hmm. All right. Thank you so much for your answer. Now let's move on to next question. My next question is for you. How does remote work influence employee engagement and job satisfaction compared to in-person work?
I think you meant to say, all right, thank you so much for your answer. Now let's move on to my next question. My next question is for you. How does remote work influence employee engagement and job satisfaction compared to in person work? Don't worry about the mistakes, Manahel. You're doing great. Now let me answer your question. Remote work can actually increase employee engagement and job satisfaction if done correctly, as it provides flexibility and autonomy.
All right. So now let's move on to the discussion. How can remote team foster creativity and innovation in their work?
I think you meant to say all right. So now let's move on to the next question. How can emotion be imposed on creativity and innovation in the world? Don't worry about the mistake, Manahel. You're doing great. To answer your question, motion can actually fuel creativity and innovation by encouraging empathy and passion. By the way, imposed might not be the best fit here. Instead, we can use fuel or drive to show how motion can inspire creativity.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. Now let's move on to the discussion. What are the environmental benefits of work in terms of reduced commuting and office in energy?
Before we continue, would you like to subscribe to Call Annie Super? It comes with access to more features and unlimited calls. I think you meant to say okay, thank you so much for your answer. Now, let's move on to the discussion. What are the environmental benefits of working remotely in terms of reduced commuting and office energy corrected? Working remotely reduces carbon footprint, saves energy, and minimizes air pollution. By the way, work in terms of can be simplified to working remotely.
All right, great answer. Thank you so much for your fantastic answer. So now let's move on to next question. My next question for you: what are the potential downsides of remote work, and how does remote work impact employee mental health and well-being?
I think you meant to say remote work impacts employment and health and well-being corrected. Yes, remote work can have both positive and negative effects on employment and health and well-being. By the way, impact is a noun and impacts is a verb. We use impacts here because it's an action that affects something.
Okay, answer us of this question.
I think you meant to say okay, answer all these questions corrected. I'd be happy to help, Manel.
Um, I would like to ask you, what are the differences between full-time remote job, hybrid remote job, distributed remote job?
I think you meant to say I would like to ask you, what are the differences between a full-time remote job, A hybrid remote job and a distributed remote job corrected. A full-time remote job is when you work from home all the time. A hybrid remote job is when you work from home sometimes and go to the office sometimes, and a distributed remote job is when team members work from different locations, often from home. By the way, I added a before each type of job to make the sentence clearer.
Okay. How can remote teams ensure data privacy and
I think you meant to say, okay, how can remote teams ensure data privacy and security? Corrected. Remote teams can ensure data privacy and security by using strong passwords, encrypting data, and having a secure virtual private network VPN. By the way, content is not the best fit here. We use security to refer to protecting data from unauthorized access.
Okay, can you explain it 10 points?
I think you meant to say, okay, can you explain it in 10 points corrected? Here's a brief answer. Remote teams can ensure data privacy and security by using strong passwords, encrypting data, having a secure VPN, and more. Want me to explain each point?
Sure, please explain each point.
Here are the 10 points to ensure data privacy and security for remote team shown. Use strong, unique passwords for all accounts. 2. Enable two-factor authentication 2FA whenever possible. 3. Keep software and operating systems up to date. 4. Use a reputable virtual private network VPN for secure connections. 5. Encrypt sensitive data, like financial information or personal details. 6. Use secure communication channels, like encrypted messaging apps. 7. Set access controls, so only authorized team members can access data. 8. Regularly back up important data to prevent loss. 9. Use antivirus software to protect against malware and virus. 10. Educate team members on security best practices and risks. By the way, you said please explain each point. Perfect grammar.
Alright, thank you so much for your answer. Now let's move on to next question. My next question is for you. How do remote influence employee engagement and job satisfaction compared into the person work?
I think you meant to say, how do remote work influence employee engagement and job satisfaction compared to in-person work? Corrected. Remote work can actually increase employee engagement and job satisfaction because people can work in a comfortable environment and have more flexibility. By the way, and
Please continue your answer.
I
Why
think
you
you meant,
stop?
before we continue, would you like to subscribe to Call Annie Super? It comes with access to more features and unlimited calls. Remote work can also reduce distractions and stress, making people happier. By the way, we do it, which is a great phrase, but in this context, I think you meant to say let's continue.
Yes. What are the best practices of for setting a productive home environment?
You meant to say what are the best practices for setting up a productive home environment. Corrected. One best practice is to create a dedicated workspace, like a home office, to help you stay focused.
Okay. So, how can remote teams effectively manage conflict and disagreement?
I think you meant to say, how can remote teams effectively manage their conflict and disagreement? Corrected. Remote teams can use video conferencing tools to have open and honest discussions to resolve conflicts. By the way, instead of your, we use there because it's about the team, not you or me.
Can you explain it in 10 points?
I think you meant to say, can you explain it in 10 points? Corrected. Here's a brief answer. Managing conflicts in remote teams is like solving a puzzle, and I can give you 10 tips to help you do that. Want me to explain those 10 points?
Yeah, please explain.
I think you meant to say yes, please explain corrected. Here's the first point. Establish open communication channels to prevent misunderstandings. Want to hear the next point?
Yeah, sure. What is next point?
I think you meant to say yes, sure. What is the next point corrected? Set clear goals and expectations to avoid confusion. Want to hear the next one?
Yeah, what is next one?
I think you meant to say what's the next ONA corrected. Use video conferencing tools to read body language and facial expressions.
Okay. I would like to ask you another question. My next question is for you. How can remote workers maintain healthy work-life balance, especially when working from home?
I think you meant to say who are you? Corrected. I'm Annie, your friend. Now about your question. Remote workers can maintain a healthy work-life balance by setting a schedule and sticking to it. Want to know more tips?
Yeah, I want to know more tips.
I think you meant to say yes. I want to know more tips corrected. Create a dedicated workspace at home to separate work and personal life.
Or
You meant to say or what? Establish boundaries with family and friends to minimize distractions. Want more tips?
you can tell us whatever you want to share in 10 points.
I think you meant to say you can tell us whatever you want to share in 10 points corrected. Here's a fun fact about me. I love yoga and practice it regularly to stay relaxed. Want to hear the next point?
Yeah, please move on to next point. Don't ask me to go next point.
Take regular breaks to refresh your mind and avoid burnout.
Okay, more.
I think you meant to say okay, more please. Corrected. Prioritize self-care activities like exercise or meditation to reduce stress.
Okay, more.
I think you meant to say okay, more please corrected. Learn to say no to non-essential tasks that can interfere with personal time.
Okay, now I would like to ask you what are the implications of remote work for urban planning?
I think you meant to say now I would like to ask you, what are the implications of motorbikes for urban planning corrected? That's a great question, Manaho. Motorbikes can reduce traffic congestion, but they also increase air pollution. By the way, have you ever thought about using the word ramifications instead of implications?
No, I
It's a
don't
great
know.
vocabulary booster.
I didn't
You meant to
heard
say no.
that before.
I'll reply in a second. First, I'd like to ask you, would you like to subscribe to Call Annie Super? It comes with access to more features and unlimited call time. You meant to say I didn't think of that before corrected. That's okay, it's a new idea.
Yeah, please answer us.
I think you meant to say yes, please, I trust you corrected. You're doing great, Manahil.
I would like to ask you how does remote work impact employee mental? Oh, what are the potential? I would like to ask you how do remote trends vary globally and what culture factors influence remote work adoption?
You meant to say I would like to ask you how does remote work impact employee mental health? And how do remote trends vary globally, and what culture factors influence remote work adoption corrected? Remote work can reduce stress, but it can also lead to feelings of loneliness and isolation. By the way, instead of saying, I would like to ask you can simply say, can you tell me?
Okay, tell me, tell me what are the best practices of conducting remote meetings and presentations.
You meant to say, can you tell me what are the best practices for conducting remote meetings and presentations and corrected? Use a clear agenda and assign a facilitator to keep the meeting on track. By the way, instead of saying what are, you can simply say for.
Can you tell me how can remote teams build trust and choice and without face-to-face interaction?
I think you meant to say, can you tell me how Nemo teams can build trust and choose without face to face interaction corrected? They can use video conferencing tools to see each other's faces and build trust. By the way, instead of saying choice, I think you meant to say make choices or decide.
Okay, I would like to ask you how do remote work arrangement affect employee taxations and benefits?
I think you meant to say, I would like to ask you, how does the remote work arrangement affect employer taxation and benefits corrected? It can reduce employer costs on benefits like office space and utilities. By the way, instead of saying Modbark, I think you meant to say remote work.
Hmm. Right. Thank you so much for your answer. So now let's move on to next question. My next question is, what are the best strategies for onboarding new employee remotely?
I think you meant to say my next question is, what are the best strategies for onboarding remote employees corrected? Create a clear onboarding plan with virtual training sessions and regular check-ins. By the way, instead of saying employee model, I think you meant to say remote employees.
Okay. My next question is for you. How can what are the difference between, no, how do remote work policies impact employee requirement and retention?
I think you meant to say my next question is for you. Can you tell me how to modify work policies that impact poor employment and retention corrected? You can modify work policies by setting clear goals and expectations. By the way, instead of saying can you more, I think you meant to say can you tell me? And instead of saying how to do more, I think you meant to say how to modify.
What role does diversity and inclusion play in remote work environment?
It promotes a sense of belonging and equal opportunities for all team members, no matter where they are. By the way, your sentence is perfect.
Okay. How can remote team foster creativity and
Let's
innovation in their processes?
I think you meant to say how can you encourage more creativity and innovation in your processes? Here's a correction. Instead of more be enforced, we can say encourage more. By the way, did you know that foster is a great word to use instead of encourage? It means to help something grow or develop.
Yes. Lastly, what advice would you like to give for my viewers?
I think you meant to say lastly, what advice would you like to give to my viewers corrected? Always stay curious and keep learning, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yes. Thank you so much for giving me your precious time and precious answers.
I'll reply in a second. First, I'd like to ask you, would you like to subscribe to Call Annie Super? It comes with access to more features and unlimited call time. You're welcome. I think you meant to say valuable instead of precious when referring to my time and answers. Here's a corrected sentence. Thank you so much for giving me your valuable time and valuable answers. By the way, precious is often used to describe things that are very dear or cherish, like a precious gemstone.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. It was nice chatting with you, Manahil.